Alright, ladies and gents, in this demo we're going to talk about responsive design, and we're going to go over the grid that you've been using, a handful of examples, and then how it can apply to your design. So first and foremost, we've been using this grid the entire semester, specifically for your desktop version, and it's really important to understand why we've been using this grid and then how it applies to mobile. So responsive, we haven't talked about a lot, but it's a really simple concept of how you can do a website layout for desktop and how it would adapt to different devices, so the iPad or the iPhone, or even using Android. So again, just this ability for a website to not have to make multiple versions or multiple apps. It will actually respond to the device itself. So the grid we've been using is a 12-column grid, and this is usually how responsive design is set up. And we can see that our mobile design grid is only 6 columns. So basically how it works is you have a 12-column grid for the desktop, and then it actually changes the column scale and then also the padding between the columns to fit onto your mobile device. So again, it's just this really simple concept that it's going to scale. So a few examples that I have, and I posted some links to these on our course Canvas. And it's really easy to understand and kind of find websites that work, and all you have to do is take the browser and you can scale it down, and certain websites like this one will actually rewrap the content. Sometimes they scale it down with type and image, but this one, all it does is as we go from desktop to iPad to mobile, it just rewraps the content. What you see is the type scale doesn't actually change. It just wraps the grid and reorganizes it. So again, this is why we've been using the grid and really focusing on our alignments, because it allows us to scale it down to the phone pretty easily. Another example, and this is more of an editorial example, is Smashing Magazine, which you all should check out. It has a basic 3-column grid, and when you scale this down, watch on the left their main navigation here, how it changes, and it becomes a top nav. So again, this is a view you would have on the iPad, and then when I actually scroll down to the phone, the menu changes up into a tab. As you can see, again, the type doesn't really scale in size, the images rewrap, and the layout rewraps. Another really interesting example is Rally Interactive Studio. And the main thing I wanted to show you is how their navigation works, but we'll take a look at the scaling. So as it scales, down to the phone, again, it's just stacking the type and image. So when this scales back up, the images actually scale in size. So again, you have some options. The one thing I want to show you is how this nav works. So a classic hamburger, and when I click that, I've actually coded some motion into it, which is pretty interesting. And lastly, Anderson Y Studio. And as that scales down, it wraps into a 2-column. Then it actually takes some of this text and blocks it into just a one-liner. So that's just another interesting solution to the problem. So again, I posted a bunch of these links, 50 examples on the course Canvas, and you can go through and kind of look at how different websites scale from desktop to mobile versions. So when we come back to put our designs together and you guys start to work with a high-res design version of your mobile, what you'll look at is something as simple as this, where you have a huge hero image and then you have usually some sort of 3-column image design. So when that wraps, just like we saw before, the hero image comes into the top here, and then really all these images do is flow one from left to right. They just flow straight down in your design. Again, you have some options of how the type may lay out. You can actually go from left justified to centered in your design. So again, you have a lot of options. As we look here with these icon design with the text, you can see that they're left justified and they're not above it in the desktop version, but in the mobile version, you can see that they're centered and the type is centered. So again, you have some options of what you can experiment with. But a couple things to keep in mind is, again, work with your alignments. Make sure you're following your grid on your mobile version, and also try to keep the scaling of the text and the image to a minimum, because that would be more in line with the purposes of why you're doing responsive design. Again, it's so it can work on multiple platforms, and it would keep a minimum of coding. So again, if you don't scale and do a ton of text changes from your desktop to mobile, it kind of limits the amount of production that would encoding that would need to be done. So again, I hope this gives you a pretty good understanding of what we've been doing this semester with the grid and how it applies, and how you're actually making a really cool website that adapts to all different platforms.